the door that changed everything. The night it all began was cold, quiet, and strangely heavy. I remember walking down Maple Street after finishing a late shift at work. The town was almost completely silent. Most houses had their lights off, and the street lamps flickered like they were struggling to stay awake. It was close to midnight. I had taken this route home 100 times before. Nothing unusual ever happened here. Just a peaceful neighborhood where people minded their own business. But that night felt different. There was a strange tension in the air that I couldn't explain. As I passed a small row of houses, I noticed something odd. One house had its porch light on. That alone wasn't strange, but the front door was slightly open. Before I could think much about it, the door suddenly swung wider. A woman stepped out quickly. She looked around the street nervously like someone being chased. Our eyes met. For a split second she froze. Then she rushed toward me. My first instinct was confusion. Before I could say anything, she grabbed my arm tightly. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Come inside before he sees you." I blinked in shock. "What?" But she didn't wait for a response. She pulled me through the door with surprising strength and slammed it shut behind us. Click. The lock turned immediately. My heart started racing. "What is going on?" I asked, stepping back. The woman leaned against the door like she had just run a marathon. Her breathing was uneven. Her hands were shaking. "Please," she whispered. "Just stay quiet for a minute." I didn't know whether to be angry, confused, or concerned. She looked to be around 25 or maybe a little older. Her dark hair fell loosely over her shoulders, and she was wearing a maroon full-sleeve dress that looked elegant but slightly wrinkled, like she had been wearing it all day. Her eyes, though, they were full of fear. Real fear. Not the kind people fake. The kind that comes from something truly dangerous. Dinner. Scroll on our phones. Sleep. Repeat. Somewhere along the way, the conversations had gotten shorter. The laughter had gotten quieter. And the space between us had gotten wider. But neither of us had said anything. Maybe because we were both afraid to admit it. The text. At 8:47 p.m., my phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text from Emily. For a brief moment, I felt a small spark of excitement. Maybe she was thinking about me. Maybe she missed me. I picked up the phone and opened the message. 3 words. "Don't wait up." That was it. No heart emoji. No explanation. No love you. Just those 3 words. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Why did it feel so strange? Emily had said similar things before when she knew she'd be late. But tonight it felt different. The words felt distant. Like a coworker sending a polite update. Not a wife talking to her husband. I typed a reply. "Okay, have fun." Then erased it. I typed again. "What time will you be home?" Erase. Another attempt. "Everything all right?" Erase again. I sighed and placed the phone on the table. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe she was just busy. But a quiet voice inside my head whispered something uncomfortable. When was the last time Emily and I had really talked? Not about bills. Not about work. Not about grocery lists. But about us. About how we felt. About whether we were still happy. I couldn't remember. The weight of waiting. For months now, I had been pretending everything was fine. Pretending the silence between us was normal. Pretending the distance didn't bother me. But the truth was, I had been waiting. Waiting for Emily to notice the change. Waiting for her to sit down beside me one night and say, "Something feels off between us." Waiting for her to ask if I was okay. Waiting for the spark we once had to somehow return. But it never did. And suddenly, staring at that message, "Don't wait up," something inside me finally broke. Not anger. Not jealousy. Just a deep exhaustion. She slowly walked toward the living room window and carefully moved the curtain just a little. Peeking outside. Her face tightened. "He's still there," she whispered. My stomach dropped. "Who's still there?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she kept watching the street. The silence stretched for several seconds. Finally, she turned toward me. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know this is strange." That's one way to put it. She managed a small nervous smile. "I didn't have a choice." My mind raced with questions. "Did you just kidnap me?" She almost laughed. "No. I might have saved you." That statement made even less sense. Saved me from what? She hesitated. Then she pointed toward the window. The man sitting in the black car across the street. A chill ran down my spine. I slowly walked toward the curtain and carefully peeked outside. Sure enough, a black sedan was parked beneath a streetlight. Inside the car, I could see a dark silhouette of someone sitting in the driver's seat. Watching. Waiting. The sight made my chest tighten. "How long has he been there?" I asked. 3 hours, she replied. 3 hours? You've been watching him that long? She nodded. Ever since he started following me. My mind tried to piece everything together. You think he's dangerous? I know he is. Her voice was firm. That's when I noticed something else. Her hands were still shaking. Not from cold. From terror. I stepped away from the window. Okay, you're going to need to explain this. She nodded slowly. You're right. She walked toward the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of water. When she handed one to me, her fingers were still trembling slightly. My name is Elena, she said. Daniel. She gave a small nod. Daniel. I'm sorry for dragging you in here like that. I took a sip of water. Yeah, that part was pretty surprising. For the first time since I entered the house, she seemed slightly calmer. But the tension in the room was still thick. He started. But now I know about it. She tilted her head. What does that mean? I shrugged. It means if that guy comes back tonight, he's not dealing with you alone. For a moment she just stared at me. Then she smiled softly. And in that moment, neither of us realized something important. The night we met was only the beginning. Because the man in the black car wasn't done yet. Not even close. And the truth about Elena's past was far more dangerous than either of us imagined. The man in the black car. After the black sedan disappeared down the street, the silence inside Elena's house felt strange. Not peaceful. Just temporary. Like the calm after a storm that hadn't really ended. Elena slowly sat down on the couch and rubbed her temples. You okay? I asked. She nodded, but it was clear she was still shaken. Every time he shows up, it feels like my chest stops working, she said quietly. I sat across from her. You shouldn't have to live like this. She gave a small, sad smile. Life doesn't always ask what we deserve. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. 12:17 a.m. You live here alone? I asked. Yes. No family nearby? My parents moved to another state last year. And your friends? I stopped seeing most of them after him. There was a lot hidden inside that sentence. But I didn't push. Instead, I asked something simpler. How did you meet him? Elena leaned back and stared at the ceiling for a moment. At a charity event. That sounds normal enough. It was. Her voice softened. He was charming. Funny. Everyone liked him. She paused. At first, I thought he was perfect. Let me guess, I said gently. He wasn't. She shook her head slowly. The first year was amazing. Her eyes looked distant now, like she was watching memories. He brought me flowers every week. Remembered every little detail about me. Called me beautiful even when I was in pajamas. I could hear the pain in her voice already. But things changed, she continued. They always do, I said quietly. She nodded. Little things at first. What kind of things? He didn't like my friends. That's usually the first red flag. Then he started telling me how to dress. Another red flag. Then he didn't like me working late. And eventually? Her voice dropped. He didn't like me being anywhere without him. I exhaled slowly. Classic control. He never hit you, did he? I asked carefully. No. But sometimes emotional damage hurts more. I couldn't argue with that. Suddenly, headlights flashed through the living room window. Elena's entire body went rigid. Don't move, she whispered. We both looked toward the street. Another car passed slowly. But it wasn't the black sedan. Just a neighbor returning home. Elena relaxed slightly. I hate this feeling, she said. What feeling? Always waiting for him to show up. I understood that kind of fear. Not knowing when trouble would return. So why hasn't the police stopped him? I asked. She sighed. Because technically, he hasn't done anything illegal. He's stalking you. He says he's concerned about me. I rolled my eyes. Classic manipulation. What's his name? I asked. Elena hesitated. Victor. Even the name sounded cold. And he just sits outside watching your house? Sometimes he sends messages. What kind? Her phone buzzed suddenly. Both of us looked down at it. A notification lit up the screen. Elena slowly picked it up. Her face immediately went pale. What is it? I asked. She turned the phone toward me. The message was from Victor. It said, I saw you bring someone inside. A cold wave ran through my chest. He saw me? I said. Elena nodded slowly. Another message appeared. You shouldn't trust strangers, Elena. My jaw tightened. That guy is insane. A third message came in. I'll come back tomorrow. Elena dropped the phone on the table like it burned her. See, she whispered. He never stops. Anger built inside me. No one should have to deal with this. She looked at me. You could leave if you want. Why would I leave? Because you're now part of his attention. I shrugged. Honestly? That guy doesn't scare me. Elena studied my face carefully. You're either brave or very stubborn. Maybe both. For the first time since I arrived, she smiled fully. A real smile. And strangely, the tension between us began to change. Not fear. Something warmer. Something human. We spent the next hour talking. About life. Work. Childhood. Memories. Elena used to want to become an artist. I told her about my terrible cooking skills. She laughed more during that hour than she probably had in weeks. And somewhere during that conversation, the fear slowly faded from her eyes. Finally, I stood up. I should probably head home. Elena walked me to the door. But before unlocking it, she hesitated. Daniel? Yeah. Thank you for staying. It wasn't exactly planned. But it meant a lot. I nodded. Well, if Victor comes back tomorrow. I know. She looked surprised. I'll be around. Her eyes softened again. You barely know me. True. But sometimes that doesn't matter. I opened the door and stepped outside. The street was quiet again. No black sedan. No shadows. Just the calm neighborhood night. But as I walked away, I had a strange feeling. Like this story wasn't over yet. Not even close. Because somewhere out there, Victor was watching. And when he came back tomorrow, things would change. In ways none of us expected. The night everything changed. The next evening, I couldn't stop thinking about Elena. All day at work, my mind kept drifting back to her frightened eyes and the message from Victor. I saw you bring someone inside. Something about it didn't sit right with me. A man who watches someone's house for hours isn't just jealous. He's obsessed. And obsession can be dangerous. So after finishing work, instead of going straight home, I walked back toward Maple Street. The sky was turning orange as the sun began to set. When I reached Elena's house, I noticed something that immediately made my stomach tighten. The black sedan was back. Parked in the exact same place. Victor was inside. Watching the house again. My jaw clenched. This guy had serious problems. I walked up to Elena's porch and knocked on the door. Within seconds it opened. Elena stood there, wearing the same maroon full-sleeve dress, but this time her expression changed from worry to surprise. Daniel? Hey. Her eyes moved toward the street. You shouldn't be here. Yeah, I figured you'd say that. I stepped inside and closed the door. He's back, she whispered. I saw. She looked frustrated. I told you not to get involved. Well, I'm stubborn. Despite everything, she smiled slightly. Then suddenly, bang! Someone slammed a car door outside. Elena's face went pale. That's him. Heavy footsteps approached the porch. My heart began pounding. Then came the loud knock. Thud. 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 Victor's voice followed. Elena. His voice was sharp and angry. Open the door. Elena stood frozen. Don't answer, she whispered. The knocking grew louder. Elena, I know you're in there. I stepped closer to the door. Maybe it's time someone talks to him. Elena grabbed my arm. No, you don't know how he is. But the knocking turned into pounding. Who's the guy you brought home? That was enough. I unlocked the door and stepped outside. Victor stood on the porch. He was tall, well-dressed, and looked like the kind of man who could charm anyone in a room. But his eyes, they were cold. Dangerous. So you're the stranger, he said. I crossed my arms. And you're the guy harassing her. His smile disappeared instantly. This is between me and Elena. Doesn't look that way. He stepped closer. You should leave. I shook my head. I don't think so. Victor's jaw tightened. Elena and I have history. And she clearly wants that history to stay in the past. He glanced past me toward the door. Elena! He shouted. Tell your friend to leave. But instead, Elena stepped outside. Her voice trembled slightly. Victor, just go home. For a moment he stared at her. Then his expression softened. Elena, you don't mean that. Yes, I do. His voice turned calm, almost manipulative. You're just confused. I'm not confused anymore. The silence on the porch became heavy. Victor looked between us. You replaced me already? Elena shook her head. No. I chose myself. That sentence hit him harder than any insult. His face twisted with anger. You think this guy will protect you? Before I could respond, Elena spoke again. I don't need protection. I just need you to leave. Victor stared at her for several seconds. Then something strange happened. He laughed. A cold, bitter laugh. You'll regret this. He turned and walked toward his car. But before getting in, he looked back once more. This isn't over. Then he drove away. The street returned to silence again. Elena slowly sat on the porch steps. Her shoulders began shaking. I sat beside her. You okay? She wiped her eyes. I've been waiting 2 years to say that to him. You did great. She laughed weakly. I thought I'd be terrified. You were brave. For a few minutes we just sat there quietly. The cool night air surrounded us. Then Elena looked at me. You didn't have to do that. I know. So why did you? I thought about it for a moment. Then answered honestly. Because no one deserves to feel trapped in their own life. Her eyes softened. You barely know me, and yet you showed up. I shrugged. Sometimes strangers show up exactly when we need them. She smiled warmly. Maybe that's true. Weeks passed after that night. Victor never came back. Elena slowly started rebuilding her life. She began painting again. Started meeting friends. And little by little, the fear left her eyes. As for us? Well, the strange night we met became the beginning of something unexpected. What started with fear and a locked door eventually became friendship. Then trust. And finally, love. One evening months later, we stood on the same porch where everything began. Elena looked at me and smiled. You know something funny? What? If I hadn't dragged you inside that night, we probably never would have met. I laughed. Best kidnapping of my life. She rolled her eyes playfully. Then leaned against my shoulder. And in that quiet moment, I realized something important. Sometimes life changes in a single unexpected second. A knock on the door. A stranger in need. Or someone whispering, come inside before he sees you. Final life lesson. Sometimes the people who enter our lives by accident become the ones who change it forever. Never ignore someone who needs help. And never underestimate the power of courage, kindness, and standing up for someone who feels alone. Because one brave moment can change 2 lives forever.